I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Harry Litman of Talking Feds. Harry, we are now learning that the Justice Engoron ruling in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case, which Engoron stated would likely be issued at first, he said January 31st. And he didn't say it's definitely January 31st. I'm setting a hard deadline. But one of the things we know about Justice Engoron is that even when he sets aspirational deadlines, he's the kind of person who likes to even beat his aspirational deadlines and not go over. So it was a bit unusual when this past week we learned that it's going to happen the first week of February, and then we learned it may be a few weeks into February. We've heard a lot of different things here. So then I think we had to search for data points why. And I know a lot of people were frustrated and they said, hey, Ben, you and a bunch of others, you were saying January 31st. And I said, I was saying what Justice Engoron was saying, but we always have to follow the data. Were there things that happened this past week that may be forcing this to take a little more time? I find two data points. I want to hear from you, though, Harry. Number one, Alan Weisselberg, we're learning, is in negotiations for another plea deal with the Manhattan District Attorney based on perjury in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case where he was caught lying on the stand and during investigations with the New York Attorney General office or New York Attorney General investigations where they were interviewing Alan Weisselberg. The other data point, that letter from the very well-respected retired federal judge Barbara Jones, which she sent on Monday. She's the independent monitor who's been working on this case for about 14 months preparing these reports. She prepared a 14-month look-back report, which basically said that even during the pendency of this litigation over the past 14 months, setting aside the other allegations at issue, she found inconsistent, erroneous, non-compliant statements, a $48 million potential phantom debt parking thing that Trump was doing with one of his entities. So I just think that Justice Engoron has to process that. What do you make of this delay? I think it's actually worse news for Trump that he's buying some additional time. What do you think?
Yeah, so I totally agree. And remember, everywhere else we're so focused on delay because we're waiting for a trial. Here it doesn't really matter. He's going to clobber him, and if it happens in 2 weeks, or it happens now or a month, it's not the same kind of stake. So where everywhere else we look at this through two lenses, here it's fine. So that's point one. Point two, I do agree with you. And look, nobody can tell a judge what to do. They don't, take a half grade off every day you're late. But man, he is very, very, very aware of the glaring spotlight here. Having said the 31st, he'd be doing as with his clerks, all-nighters after all-nighters to get it out then. So something happened. That's not just, I need a little bit more time. I like both your points, Ben. So Weisselberg, it looks like he's gonna plead guilty to another perjury count. He's like the ultimate, Trump roadkill. He's just become a, piñata for Donald Trump and is just sitting there and hit me again. He's not going to cooperate. But prosecutors hate perjury. It's the perjury. We're not sure what it is yet, but my surmise is it has something to do with the 30,000 foot, actual 10,000 foot apartment. And he had a fair bit of back and forth on that on the stand and then suddenly shut up. And he said at one point, I wasn't really focused on it. And then we learned he was all over the effort within Trumpland to get the Forbes magazine folks to walk it back. So I think that is perjury. It's not perjury that went to the case itself so much. It really went to the kind of case that Cyrus Vance was first going to bring about false valuations, but still they have them dead to rights. And, talk about everything Trump touches dies. He's, dying multiple deaths. Now, the interesting thing to me is there's no way that Engoron can get advance notice of this, right? It's not as if the prosecutors call up and say, look what's coming. So somehow he has wind of it, but I think it could be germane. He could want to say, when he is making his overall judgment. What's the damage? And more importantly, remember, James has asked for Trump to be barred from ever working in the real estate industry and being a director or officer anywhere else. There's the other aspect of the case already out there with the certificates that Engoron yanked. So I think that stuff, knowing that the Trump corporation is kind of incorrigible, and look, they get up on the stand and lie, will matter, and even more the Barbara Jones piece. And people have, Trump, some kind of, I don't know, phony erudition compared it to Inspector Javert, which makes him, I think he's a very poor Jean Valjean, but that information doesn't matter whether it's criminal. What matters is not only did they make all these mistakes, but there's no internal controls. There's no structure. They're a mess. And what Jones says at the end is this could really continue to deceive third parties. So Engoron can really process that information. And when he figures what needs to be done here, because really that is what this is about. Yeah, the banks, in fact, should have been charging higher rates because the loans were much more risky than they knew. So that kind of fact, I think he can use and will use to incorporate in his holding. And, it's a 12-page letter we read, but it's got, finding after finding, and it's a whole like little law firm there that's going over what the Trump corporation's been doing over this last year, and they're a mess. And that matters when you're Engoron and trying to figure out what should my penalty scheme be, how much of what James is asking for do I award, and the like.
At a minimum, retired federal judge Barbara Jones' letter reflects, at a minimum, that even during the pendency of the lawsuit, the Trump organization is a mess. That's the best case reading of it, is that you're under this massive lawsuit where your compliance should be at its highest. You should not be having incomplete, erroneous, non-compliant type statements. And a respected retired federal judge is looking at this and saying, whoa, there are a lot of issues here. And I think that what Judge Barbara Jones also hinted at is that her powers are currently limited to preparing reports and just raising questions. She does not have the power to kind of further investigate, to request certain injunctive relief, to to do more than just look at the documents she's being provided absent additional court orders. And so one of the remedies that New York Attorney General Letitia James is requesting is this kind of an ongoing monitorship post verdict that will deal with the dissolution, that will deal with the Trump organization as an ongoing enterprise, as it is required to wind down, as it is required to get rid of these assets to ultimately pay the disgorgement judgment. And I think that's one of the things that Trump has been most irked about, that he, with all of these cases, whether it's the E. Jean Carroll, $83.3 million stuff, Trump is still under this financial microscope right now. And in addition to the headline, that's of course going to be the number. Trump gets hit with something $370 million or a larger verdict. But to me, what I think Trump may be equally afraid about is this ongoing monitorship, because that's where the teeth is in actually gutting the organization. And then I don't know if you think this is possible, but I think it is, that you could potentially give more robust powers to a monitor to kind of take a more involved role in the dissolution as part of the injunctive relief, to request very quick remedies, post-verdict remedies of the court. So instead of New York Attorney General Letitia James having to go file all new lawsuits, get all new discovery, can the monitor which will be kind of a more robust role of someone who's going to help dissolve the organization, immediately go to the judge and flag things like, Judge, $48 million loan doesn't exist based on our data. Where'd this go? And then the judge almost holds these kind of mini hearings to enforce an existing judgment based on the ongoing fraud. Do you think that's possible?
100%, and it's way worse. First, to understand, all her lookout is for now is just to keep track of things, lest he pull a fast one and get rid of all his money, or somehow give it to others and play fast and loose. That's her only job now. But absolutely, if there are remedies here that will call for continuing court oversight, and that's not going to be Engoron, that's going to be a monitor, and that's going to be likely now Jones. So of course she's going to have all this power. So in his charming way, the first thing he does is just crap all over her and say how terrible she is. And she's going to have a lot of his fate in her hands. It's likely she's going to be the case. And, Engoron keeps jurisdiction, and she'll be able to make recommendations to Engoron. And you can bet 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 times he will adopt. So when it's really time, when a remedy has been ordered, and it includes write a check, and a big check. Okay, but also here's the way we're going to have to get rid of some of your properties. She's the one who's going to ride herd on it. You have defendants who tear their hair out being having to deal with monitors for years. And I think that's a likelihood here, and he's just acted perfectly to invite her to respond with suspicion and harshly when she gets, as you say, a lot more power. That really Engoron will just be like, checking off the things she says. She's the central figure now if she becomes the monitor, and she's odds on to become the monitor.
One of the most well-respected retired federal judges, most kind of,
and she's done this a lot. Yeah, big cases.
She's very in demand. She's on a ton of cases. And so for Trump and his lawyer, Cliff Robert, to say that she lacks the competency and really attack her intelligence after her letter was still respectfully written and could have been far more scathing. And I think that she now recognizes, got it. I got it. Understood. Yeah. I will proceed. I will govern myself accordingly. Yeah. I get it. And it's one of those things too, where Donald Trump just doesn't know the law of holes, because he just keeps on digging and digging. Harry, it was great hearing your perspective right there. Everybody, make sure you check out the Talking Feds YouTube channel. It is partnered with the MeidasTouch network. Let's help them get 250,000 subscribers there. It's a perfect complement to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. It definitely fills in some of the gaps here with the great legal analysis by Harry Litman. Check it out. We'll see you next time. Hit subscribe here as well.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks to all your listeners, too. Talk to you next week.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.